Hello everyone, and welcome to Creating Accessible Multimedia with a Focus on YouTube. My name is James Herndon, and I am an accessibility consultant with Equal Entry. We do trainings like this, and we also do audits for accessibility on site systems, apps, VR experiences, and so on. And our goal with these trainings is to help people understand core concepts of accessibility. Where are we going to go today? Most of today's presentation will revolve around three things, which are pre-recorded video captioning, text transcripts, which I would almost consider a subset of the captioning, and then finally audio description. We'll spend most of our time on those things, and then we'll wrap with some resources and key takeaways. So we're going to start with pre-recorded video captioning. This is distinct from live captions. Live captions have a whole different set of requirements and a whole different set of complications. If any of you are curious about how to approach live captions, you can let Chris Daniel know, and he will get in touch with me, and I will get in touch with you. But today, I'm going to be focusing solely on pre-recorded video captioning. That's what you will see on 99% of YouTube. It's not coming to you live. It's been uploaded and then hopefully captioned. And that's what we're talking about today. So first, we're going to zoom out a little bit and talk about what we mean when we say caption. So captions are text elements synchronized with the audio track of a video. This includes dialogue as well as important sounds like music and applause. We have a screenshot here as an example. This is from a video we published on YouTube about speech recognition tools. Let me play the beginning of the video for you.
Windows 10 has introduced a powerful new feature to the desktop experience.
So when the Equal Entry logo appears, a bell chimes in the background. And in the captions, we included bell chime sounds so that people with hearing disabilities will not only receive an equivalent experience, but will also know that the captions are working in this video. They're turned on. And this is what differentiates captions from subtitles. You may have seen those words used interchangeably, but in this particular case, what we mean to say is captions, because captions include non-dialogue sounds too. Subtitles is just the dialogue, but captions is the dialogue in addition to sound effects, music, background sounds, or even no sound at all, as we'll get into. Those should all be accounted for in captions. Captions are specifically geared to assist people who are deaf or hard of hearing and provide them an alternative for that multimedia. But they can also be very useful to non-native speakers. I've talked to several people who, when they are trying to learn a language such as English, they watch shows that they have seen previously dubbed into Spanish or French or some other language. Maybe they've seen that episode of The Simpsons before, and they basically have the plot memorized, but they don't speak English. And what they can do is they can watch it at home, turn on the captions, and that gives them a visual reinforcement for the auditory learning that they're trying to do. Closed captions versus open captions. These are the two main types of captions you'll encounter. The difference between them is that closed captions can be turned on and off. If you look here at the screenshots from YouTube, on the left you can see that we have a little CC button in the player bar, so CC being an abbreviation for closed captions. And if I were in YouTube and I clicked on that, then I would get this black box with the white text on top of it, and that is a closed caption. An open caption, on the other hand, is burned directly into the video. It's part of the presentation, and there's no way to disable it. So no matter what platform you played it on, you would have captions, which is great for when you're sharing video on systems that do not allow the closed caption option. And that's not very many systems, but there are some. So it's good to know. The FCC has clarified quality standards for captioning, and that has set the precedent for online video captioning for closed and open captions. And as a whole, you're going to be responsible for four things. First is accuracy. So the captions need to relay the speaker's exact words with correct spelling, punctuation, and grammar with 99% accuracy and no paraphrasing. Captions must honor the original tone and intent of the speaker. And captions must match background noises and other sounds to the fullest extent possible. So there may be situations where those noises are not decipherable to anyone watching the video, and so the captioner would not be expected to decipher something no one else can decipher. If you have watched programs with captions, particularly live broadcasts, you may have seen the word indecipherable appear in brackets. That's an acknowledgement of we made our best effort, but we have no idea what that noise is. Second is time synchronization. Captions must align with their corresponding spoken words and sounds to the greatest extent possible. It's okay for captions to pop up a little before something is spoken or go on a little after, but you generally want to keep them as close to the real-time dialogue as possible. An exception might be if people are talking very fast or there's a quick back and forth and you want to give people a little bit of a chance to read the caption before you cut them off, realizing that not everybody can photo read. Third is program completeness. Captions must be included from the beginning to the end of the program to the fullest extent possible. They shouldn't start late or cut off early. And then finally, placement. You want them to be positioned on screen without blocking important content. And then finally, placement. You want captions to be positioned on screen without blocking important content. Now, it's okay for captions to periodically block something. I've seen county videos where the Montgomery County seal appears at the beginning and then the captions temporarily block it. That's fine. What you're trying to avoid is something like a news broadcast where a person's name might appear on screen only for a few seconds, but their name is obscured by captions the whole time. If that happens, then we aren't providing a truly accessible experience, because if somebody who is hard of hearing is watching the broadcast and they need the captions on, they're not going to catch the speaker's name if it's provided that way. Automatically generated captions. Bottom line, don't use them. They're very easy to spot. This screenshot I took here is from the County Executive Weekly Update message. You may notice here that the caption says, libraries and nearly 3,000 tests that were provided to our schools. It's very obvious that that is an auto-generated caption because that's almost certainly not the words that were spoken. It was probably the number 3,000. And it shouldn't fall upon people with disabilities to figure that out. So, as I mentioned earlier, you are responsible for making your captions accurate, and just having captions isn't enough. You're also responsible for quality and accuracy, and if you're trying to get to that 99% using automatic captions on a platform like YouTube, they tend to average about 60 to 70% accuracy. And the takeaway there is 60 to 70% accuracy. Number one, that won't be accessible to a lot of people, and number two, it won't protect you from a lawsuit. So the industry standard is 99%, and the ADA requires that 99% too, because it's the FCC standard. And you'll need it for any employee-facing videos or public-facing videos. So I'm going to give you a bit of a demo about how easy it is now to have captions added and created on a video. Here we have a video called Captions Demo. I'm going to play a little of it and have the auto-generated captions displayed.
Hi, this is Equal Entry, and I would like to demonstrate what snap turning looks like.
So already you may, if you can see the screen, detect that there are some errors. Equal entry is marked as eagle entry in the captions, and snap turning is marked as that turning. So one way to address this is if this is your video and you're on the page for that video, you can simply select Edit Video. And from the left margin, you can select Subtitles. We have some auto-generated captions. I'm going to go and select Edit. And I can then select Edit as Text. And I can go ahead and edit them right here in the browser. So here I will first add a speaker attribution. The speaker's name is Kenji. I'll add a bit of punctuation. Hi, comma, this is Equal Entry. And I would like to demonstrate what snap turning looks like. I'll say publish. Now I will go back and select the thumbnail for my video to pull it up.
Hi, this is Equal Entry, and I would like to demonstrate what snap turning looks like. So, I am in a virtual...
And as you can see, the captions have been corrected. So it's a fairly simple process to make adjustments to auto-generated captions that are added to your video automatically. And another thing to note before we go away here is when you're editing them, you notice that in the subtitles menu, in the edit screen here, I did not attempt to edit them with the timestamp still displayed. If you do that, you can have lines that exceed the length of characters that'll be displayed at any given time, and you may cause display errors. So you want to be sure to select Edit as Text and edit the captions that way with the timestamps not applied. And when you select Publish, timestamps will be reapplied appropriately. Platform support. So at this time, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, as I mentioned, all support that sidecar file. Sidecar meaning your captions are in a separate file from your video. So for example, if I wanted to upload a video to the Montgomery County Facebook page to share with constituents, I would need to download the file from YouTube if that's where it was hosted. I would download the file from YouTube as an SRT, that's the name of the file type. And then Facebook has an interface that would let me attach an SRT file to the video. Some internal video sharing platforms, some instant message type platforms or task tracking type platforms, they might allow you to upload a video, but they might not allow you to upload a sidecar file. And if that's the case, we would use open captions. Those are the ones I showed earlier, where the captions are burned into the video. And if you're using a vendor for captions, and if you're not doing the YouTube method I demoed, keep in mind that you can't create open captions with YouTube. So if they are required, you're probably going to need to use a vendor, because you may need to work with the creator of the video in order to put those captions in the video file itself. And if you're working with a vendor, that is an additional ask in terms of workload. They're not just creating the caption text, they have to manually edit the video file as well to make the captions part of the file to hard code in there. So that's not a reason to avoid doing it, but just something to be aware of for your own budgeting. Now we're going to move on to text transcripts. This video has a text transcript that is based on the caption text. The reason that I consider text transcripts a subset of captions is that they are essentially the exact same thing, just without the timestamps. Most transcripts on the web are provided in HTML, so there's not a set file type or design for transcripts. There isn't even a required format for them. This screenshot is an example of how a transcript is displayed in YouTube, where we have the video on one side with the captions displayed and the transcript updates in real time on the other. YouTube does this automatically, and it uses our caption file to display a text transcript that you can navigate and select a given line of dialogue to jump to that part of the video. Again, there's not a set requirement for what transcripts need or what format the transcript needs to take. It just needs to include all the equivalent information that would otherwise be hidden to folks who can't see the video. Okay, audio descriptions. Before I get into what audio descriptions are, let me show you what that looks like. This is a Fortnite trailer. Fortnite is an online video game for those who aren't familiar with it. For the purposes of this demo, I've added captions for the audio describer's narration, even though they are not required by law for audio description specifically. So here's the video. Shohei Ohtani winds up his baseball bat. The pitcher throws, and Ohtani hits the ball out of the park. A samurai shoves him out of the way. and hits the next pitch even farther, hitting Scoop as he leaves an ice cream shop. Otani uses his bat to nudge the samurai out of the way. He steps back up and hits the ball very high, popping a hot air balloon supporting a flying bus. As the bus falls to the ground, Otani and the samurai exchange uneasy looks and flee the scene. Title: Fortnite and Shohei Otani, Xbox logo. So if you're wondering, yes, that was me narrating the trailer. I do audio descriptions for video games, movies, and television. Audio descriptions, as you probably understand by now, they are a secondary narration track intended for blind and low vision consumers of visual media, and they are intended to communicate anything that is happening on screen but isn't acknowledged in the dialogue. It's a way to share that information with people who may not be able to see the screen. Now, obviously, people who are blind or low vision are the target audience for audio description, but similar to captions, you don't have to be part of that target group to assume that this technology won't benefit you. Audio description has proven to be beneficial to a wide variety of people. I've spoken with several folks on the autism spectrum, and many of them find that audio description helps them better understand emotional and social cues that are only demonstrated through actions or facial expressions. Auditory learners, I think the stat is 20 to 30% of students say they retain information best through sound. Audio description helps them learn. Language students, listening is a key step in learning a language and associating speech with actions and behaviors. And then just anyone desiring more flexibility in their media consumption. Audio descriptions allow viewers to enjoy videos in eyes-free environments. I used to have an hour-and-a-half commute to a work site, and I would sometimes listen to Netflix shows in my car via Bluetooth with audio description enabled, never having to look at the screen. It was like a very elaborate podcast. So again, that's just to show that none of these accessibility features that we're talking about are niche fixes. They really do benefit all users when they're available. So that trailer we just watched for a Fortnite update, that's an example of standard audio description. Some of you may have noticed just how brief those descriptions were, and that's because with standard audio description, the narrator talks through a presentation describing what is happening on the screen, or on stage if it's a theater show, without interrupting dialogue or pausing the video. And descriptions in that particular video, in the game trailer, they were very brief because the speaker was trying to fit descriptions within the pauses in dialogue and not have to pause the visuals so that the narration could catch up. And the reason they did that is so they did not have to do what's called extended audio description, which is when the video is periodically paused and a narrator provides a longer, more detailed description of what's happening on screen, and then the video resumes playback. Let me show you an example of extended audio description, and then I'll get into some contrasts between the two methods.
Jane presses the button on the pedestrian crossing. Above the button she presses, there is a bicycle and a man icon. They are lit up and red. When she presses the button, these icons turn from red to green.
When you are ready to cross the road, press the button and wait for the light to turn from red to green. Don't cross until the light has turned green.
So you may have noticed that the video starts on pause. The speaker provides a detailed description, and then the video is permitted to continue. So which one should you use, standard or extended? It really depends on how visually complex the video is and how essential the material on screen is to understanding the content. And the more visually stylized your video is, the more difficult it might be to use standard audio descriptions. But that's not always the case. It may be that the visual dazzle is pure decoration. It's just smoke and mirrors, and it's not necessary in order to understand what's being communicated. However, in general, I do recommend erring on the side of providing description wherever you can, whenever you can, and using extended audio description if it's necessary. And that can be a real challenge because based on user feedback and in addition to some studies that I've done, It seems that most people prefer standard audio descriptions without the pauses, just descriptions in between dialogue. And it's usually because standard audio descriptions are closer to an equivalent experience. You don't have to stop the video, catch up, stop the video, catch up, and so on. They allow someone to experience media in the same amount of time as everyone else. So with extended audio description, a 30-minute sitcom could become an hour-long sitcom. And stop, start might start to feel a bit frustrating. So it's generally best to avoid extended if you can get away with using standard. And if you're not sure which you need, I really recommend this quiz over on 3Play Media. If you Google 3Play Media Extended versus Standard, this is a great quiz you can take to try to figure out which type you need to use for a particular video. Fortunately, there is a way around the standard versus extended question, and that is to use something called integrated audio description. And integrated audio description is when a speaker describes what's happening on screen in their dialogue, and by doing so, the need for audio descriptions goes away because everything is being communicated in the dialogue, and thus the visual accompaniment is decoration or reinforcement. It isn't telling the user something that they don't already know from either hearing the dialogue or reading the dialogue in captions or in the transcript. And that's generally the best way to go. I show a photo of Fred Rogers here because he was one of the first TV personalities to use integrated audio description. In an early episode, he fed the fish in his tank and talked about it. And for a few episodes after that, he would feed the fish as he was telling an unrelated story and didn't say out loud that he was feeding the fish. And apparently he received letters from a few blind children who were worried that the fish weren't being fed. And so from then on, anytime he picked up the fish food on the show, he would say, "I'm feeding the fish now." And if you remember the show, he actually did this for most of the physical actions he performed. You may have seen him say, "I'm tying my shoe, I'm going to put this jacket on," and so on. And that was not only to make what was happening clearer to children, but also so that children with disabilities, specifically children who are blind or low vision, would be able to understand what was happening on his show. Another great example of integrated audio description that I want to share, just to reinforce how useful it can be, is these two scenes I'm going to show you from the Great British Baking Show. Much of this show is not audio described because the contestants are often describing what they're doing while they're doing it. And the hosts comment on what's being shown too. And so there is an audio description track for the show on Netflix that you can toggle on. And they do need to add just a little bit of audio description, but they don't need to add very much. I'll show you a clip right now.
Right, so for the Genoese, tip the eggs and sugar into a bowl, whisk the mixture until it reaches 43 degrees.
I've never made a Genoese. Damn it!
If the bakers don't whisk for long enough,
I swear I get a good strong arm.
they won't get enough air into the Genoese sponge to create the volume that Prue is expecting.
I think it's wonderful. Oh, thank you.
The balance of spices that you put in is perfect. It's nice and moist inside there. And the design as well is faultless, actually.
Faultless?
Faultless.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Michael and Henry beam as Michelle screams silently with excitement.
Faultless.
So you may have noticed that the contestants are enacting the dialogue. Right, so for the Genoese, tip the eggs and sugar into the bowl, whisk the mixture until it reaches 43 degrees, and so on. Even if I can't see the screen, I still know what's happening based on what they're saying, right? That part doesn't need audio description because what's happening on screen matches the dialogue. The audio description is only necessary in revealing the contestants' silent facial expressions when they're being judged in that final round. It says, Michael and Henry beam as Michelle screams silently with excitement. You may notice with that quick description, they're fitting it in between pauses and dialogue. And in a way, they're keeping it fairly similar to text alternatives. Those of you who've written text alternatives know to just keep it concise and just move on, ground your descriptions in the most familiar terms possible, only describe the scene, not the implied, and move on. So some takeaways there are, if you do have to have audio description, use the present tense active voice. Sound confident, interested, warm, and authoritative. And as I was saying, remember that good audio description is often similar to good alt text. Conclusion. The precise methods for making multimedia accessible are often changing based on new features on popular platforms. These things are always a bit up in the air because it's tech, right? Nothing is made of anything solid as much as we might wish it were. So the challenge there is, how do you keep up with the times? But more pertinent to your work, how do you meet the letter of the law? And the way to do that is just to make sure you provide those alternatives that we've been talking about unless you have a legitimate exception. As in, you've used integrated audio description, so you don't need audio description. Or you're providing a video as an example of something you've just provided in text, but there's no audio. So you can use the phrase "no audio" in brackets as the caption. You don't need to have everything else there. But if you find yourself having to guess, do I need it, do I not, always go ahead and do it, because you're going to meet requirements that way, and you're going to make your platform accessible that way. But just do your best to keep up with changing times. Generally, in terms of your own liability, it's going to be essential for you to make the best faith effort to add a sidecar file and so on, if that feature is available on a platform. If it's not, you may get a little more forgiveness, but there are always workarounds. If you can't do a sidecar file for closed captions, then use open captions. You're going to be safer that way, and you're going to provide an accessible experience that way. More importantly, you never know when a particular platform is going to suddenly offer something in terms of accessibility that it didn't offer before, and you are accountable for using whatever features are available in that platform. So some key takeaways. Captions are modal presentations of text equivalents of the audible portion of videos, and also the absence of the audible portion, where I would say no audio. Closed captions require a sidecar file like SRT or VTT. Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter all accept sidecar files as closed captions. If you're using a platform that doesn't, use open captions and burn them right into the video file. Audio descriptions can be standard or extended, but standard is best. And you can avoid the need for audio descriptions if your dialogue describes what's happening on screen. If you're looking for a little more information, you have a great web accessibility guide. It covers captioning and audio description, as well as a lot of other things related to images and video and other multimedia. There's the DCMP guidelines. DCMP stands for Described and Captioned Media Program. That gets into the weeds a bit more about what specifically is recommended in terms of how you might approach captioning. And that's also very useful if you're getting into live captioning, which is a whole other area, as I mentioned. And 3Play Media has a great page called The Ultimate Guide to Audio Description, if you want to dive further into that topic. So thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it.